My name is Hana and I'm 29 years old. I'm Japanese by heritage, but my family moved to America when I was just a child. Growing up in a blend of cultures shaped me into who I am today, confident, adventurous, and unapologetically myself. Standing at 5 feet 5 inches with a slender figure and smooth porcelain skin, I've often been told that I look like I stepped out of a painting. But it's not just my appearance that turns heads, it's the way I carry myself, the spark in my eyes that hints at the fire within. I live alone in a chic apartment in downtown Los Angeles, surrounded by the buzz of a city that never sleeps. My life is a whirlwind of work, late night outings, and fleeting connections. I thrive on the energy of nightclubs, the pulsing music, the flashing lights, and the magnetic pull of strangers whose lives intersect with mine for just a moment. It's not uncommon for me to leave the club with someone new, someone who can match my energy, my hunger for excitement. That night was no different. I had just stepped into one of my favorite clubs, the air thick with the scent of perfume, sweat, and alcohol. I wore a sleek black dress that hugged my curves perfectly, paired with heels that made my legs look endless. My long dark hair cascaded down my back, catching the light as I moved. I could feel the eyes on me, the whispers of admiration and envy as I made my way to the bar. And then I saw him. He was leaning casually against the bar, a drink in his hand and a smirk on his lips. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his sharp jawline could have been sculpted by the gods themselves. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded a confidence that was impossible to ignore. Our eyes met, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a way that made my pulse quicken. I ordered my usual drink, a classic martini, and took a seat near him, pretending not to notice his gaze. But I could feel it, burning into me, drawing me in. I finally turned to him, offering a smile that was equal parts playful and inviting. "Enjoying the view?" I teased, tilting my head slightly. "Very much," he replied, his voice smooth and deep. "And you?" "I suppose it's not bad," I said, taking a sip of my drink. "But the night is still young." We talked, the conversation flowing effortlessly. His name was Ethan, and he had a charm about him that was both intoxicating and dangerous. He told me about his work in the city, his passion for art, and the way he found inspiration in unexpected places. But it wasn't just his words that captivated me, it was the way he looked at me, as if I was the only person in the room. As the night wore on, the club grew louder, the crowd denser, but we remained locked in our little bubble. When he reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers brushing against my skin, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The chemistry between us was undeniable, electric. "Do you want to get out of here?" I finally asked, my voice barely audible over the music. He didn't hesitate. "Lead the way." The taxi ride back to my apartment was charged with anticipation. We sat close, our thighs brushing against each other, his hand resting lightly on my knee. By the time we reached my door, my heart was racing. I unlocked it with trembling fingers, and as soon as we stepped inside, he pulled me close, his lips capturing mine, in a kiss that was both passionate and demanding. The rest of the night was a blur of heat and sensation. He was everything I had hoped for and more. Attentive, confident, and unrelenting. For hours, we explored each other, pushing boundaries and losing ourselves in the moment. When the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the city, I found myself lying next to him, my body sated but my mind racing. Ethan had awakened something in me, a deeper hunger that I hadn't realized was there. But as I looked at him, his face peaceful in sleep, I couldn't help but wonder what this night would mean when the day began. The day brought its clarity, but also its complications. Ethan stirred beside me, his eyes fluttering open to reveal a softness that contrasted with the intensity of the night before. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice still heavy with sleep. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Good morning." The words felt intimate, as though we had shared more than just a night of passion. But beneath the surface, my mind was already grappling with the reality of what had transpired. As we shared coffee and light conversation, I found myself studying him. Ethan was more than just a handsome face. He was intriguing, with a depth that hinted at a story waiting to be told. Yet I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I had crossed a line, indulged a part of myself that I usually kept in check. Later that day, as I walked through the bustling streets of Los Angeles, I replayed the night in my mind. The connection, the chemistry, it was undeniable. But what did it mean for me, for my life of independence and fleeting encounters? Ethan had stirred something in me, something that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. For the next few days, I found myself distracted, my thoughts drifting back to him. Would I see him again? Did I want to? The questions lingered unanswered as I navigated the delicate balance between my desire for freedom and the possibility of something more. Days passed, but the memory of that night remained vivid, like a spark refusing to fade. I couldn't shake the image of his piercing eyes, the feel of his hands on my skin, the way he seemed to understand me in a way few ever did. My thoughts were a whirlwind of desire and doubt, an endless tug of war that left me yearning for answers. One evening, as the city bathed in the golden hues of sunset, my phone buzzed with a message. It was Ethan. His words were simple but carried a weight that made my heart race. "Thinking about you. Want to meet?" I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. The rational part of me urged caution, but the fire he had ignited within me burned too brightly to ignore. Before I knew it, I had typed the reply, "Tonight." My place. The hours leading up to his arrival were a blur of anticipation and nervous energy. I found myself replaying every moment of our first encounter, the way he had made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. When the knock finally came, my heart leaped and I opened the door to find him standing there, his presence as commanding as ever. "Hannah," he said, his voice low and filled with a warmth that made my knees weak. "Ethan," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. The tension between us was palpable, a magnetic pull that drew us together, even as unspoken questions lingered in the air. The night unfolded much like our first, a dance of passion and connection that left no room for doubt or hesitation. But this time, there was something different, a deeper intensity that hinted at emotions neither of us were ready to acknowledge. As the night gave way to dawn, I found myself once again lying beside him, the weight of the unspoken hanging heavy in the air. Ethan had become more than just a fleeting connection. He had become a question I wasn't sure how to answer, a possibility I wasn't ready to face. In the days that followed, I grappled with the aftermath of our second encounter. The lines between desire and emotion had blurred, leaving me in uncharted territory. My life of independence and fleeting encounters suddenly felt incomplete, as if something fundamental had shifted. Ethan had awakened a part of me I hadn't known existed, a hunger not just for passion, but for something more lasting, something real. I found myself thinking about him at the oddest times. During meetings, while sipping my morning coffee, even in the middle of a yoga session, his presence lingered like a shadow, a constant reminder of what I couldn't have and yet couldn't let go. My thoughts were a chaotic blend of longing and resistance, a war between my heart and my head. Then came the moment I dreaded, a chance encounter at a gallery opening. Ethan was there, standing across the room, looking effortlessly handsome in a tailored suit. Our eyes met, and the air between us crackled with unspoken tension. He crossed the room, his gaze never leaving mine, and stopped just a breath away. "Hannah," he said softly, his voice a mixture of surprise and relief. "Ethan," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Nor I," he said, his eyes searching mine. "But I'm glad I did. There's something I need to say. My heart raced as I waited for him to continue. That night, or rather those nights, weren't just moments for me. They were different. You're different. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I wanted to respond, to tell him that I felt the same, but the words caught in my throat. Hannah, he said, his hand brushing against mine. I know you value your independence, and I admire that about you, but I can't ignore what I feel for you. I want more than just fleeting moments. I want you. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes. It was too much to resist. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. Ethan, I whispered, I'm scared. Scared of what this means, scared of losing myself. But I can't deny what I feel either. His hand found mine, his grip firm yet gentle. Then let's figure it out together, he said. No pressure, no expectations, just us, one step at a time. And in that moment, surrounded by the hum of the gallery and the weight of our shared history, I knew I had found something worth holding on to. Ethan wasn't just a fleeting connection, he was the beginning of something real, something that could redefine everything I thought I knew about love, desire, and the art of living in the moment. As the days drifted by, the pull between Ethan and me grew stronger. Every moment we spent together deepened the connection, yet the complexity of it all left me questioning my next move. Despite how natural it felt to be with him, there was a part of me that couldn't help but hold back. I had lived a life where independence was my greatest ally, where I controlled my fate and dictated the pace of every encounter. But Ethan, with his quiet intensity and unwavering confidence, had started to chip away at those walls, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep them up. One evening, after dinner at a cozy little Italian restaurant, we decided to take a walk along the beach. The air was cool, the sound of waves crashing against the shore providing a soothing backdrop to the chaos in my mind. Ethan walked beside me in silence, the soft glow of the streetlights casting a gentle light over his face. There was a calmness to him, an ease that made me feel at home even in my uncertainty. He reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. Instead, I let my fingers intertwine with his, the simple touch sending a warmth through me that made my heart beat just a little faster. Do you ever wonder what it all means? He asked. His voice low, barely louder than the sound of the waves. What do you mean? I replied, glancing at him curiously. Life, all the fleeting moments, the people we meet. I wonder if any of it really means anything, or if it's just passing time? I thought about his question for a moment, the weight of it settling in. I had always believed in living for the moment, embracing the transient nature of things. It was easier that way. No attachments, no complications. But now, with Ethan beside me, his presence more than just a passing fancy, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it than that. I used to think it was all just temporary, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But now, with you, I'm not so sure. His eyes locked with mine, the intensity there making me feel exposed, vulnerable. I don't want temporary with you, Hannah, he said softly. I want something real. I want to know you, all of you, not just the version you let the world see, but the one beneath it all. His words struck a chord deep inside me, stirring emotions I had long suppressed. I wanted to tell him that I felt the same, that there was something in me that was starting to break free, that longed for something more than the fleeting encounters I had always sought. But the fear of losing myself, of letting go of the carefully constructed life I had built, held me back. Instead, I pulled away slightly, shifting the conversation. We're not so different, I said, trying to deflect. You've lived a life that's all about chasing inspiration, finding beauty in the chaos. I've lived mine chasing freedom, embracing the unknown. We're both just looking for something to make us feel alive. Ethan didn't respond right away. He simply kept walking beside me, his grip on my hand firm yet gentle. For a moment, there was no pressure, no expectation, just two people walking along the shore, lost in their own thoughts, but somehow sharing the same space. Later that night, after we had parted ways with a kiss that felt like a promise, I found myself lying awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions: longing, fear, excitement. I had spent so much of my life avoiding attachments, avoiding the messiness of love and connection. But now, with Ethan, it felt different. It felt like something worth exploring, something worth risking. The days that followed were a blur of anticipation and hesitation. Ethan continued to be a constant presence in my life, calling, texting, sending me little surprises that made my heart flutter. Every interaction was laced with the same intensity, the same undeniable pull. But the closer we became, the more I realized how much I had to let go of in order to truly be with him. I couldn't hold on to my old ways, my need for solitude, and still allow room for him in my life. I had to choose whether to open myself up fully or to let this connection slip away like so many others before it. One afternoon, as I was walking through the city, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "I'm thinking of you. I want to see you tonight." The simplicity of his words made my chest tighten, a familiar flutter of excitement stirring within me. But beneath that excitement was the same fear, the same hesitation. What did I want? What was I willing to risk? That evening, as the sun began to set, I found myself standing at my apartment door, waiting for him to arrive. My heart was racing, and I could feel the familiar pull of uncertainty gnawing at me. But this time, something was different. I was ready to face it, to face the possibility of something real, something more than just fleeting moments. When the knock came, I opened the door to find Ethan standing there, his presence as commanding as ever. He didn't need to say anything. The look in his eyes said it all. Without a word, I stepped aside to let him in. The tension between us was palpable, but this time it wasn't a barrier. It was the beginning of something new. As we embraced, the uncertainty faded away, replaced by a quiet certainty that whatever came next, we would face it together. The night unfolded in a blur of warmth and connection, each moment more intimate than the last. As we lay together, the weight of everything we had shared and everything we still had yet to explore hung in the air. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel like I had to protect myself from the possibility of loss. Instead, I felt a sense of peace, knowing that whatever happened, I had chosen to take a chance on something real, something that, for once, didn't need to be defined by the fleeting nature of the world around us. It was just us, alive, in the moment, and ready to see where this would take us.